Hey, this is Nick the Mining Book Guy. It is the afternoon of Saturday, November 6th, 2021. Longtime followers know that Chesser Resources, which is CHZ on the ASX, has been a big pick of mine going back year, 2 years ago. I haven't talked about it in over a year, and there have been many people that have joined the email list since then who might not even be aware that this was a big pick. But it's going to be tough for me to make this an entirely comprehensive video, though I will cover many things. If you stick with me for at least the next 5 or 10 minutes, I will tell you the number one reason why Chesser stands out, which, as you can see up here, it's related to recent announcements from Barrick Gold, a senior producer that all of you are likely familiar with. And I will talk about why it's still a very large position of mine, and I'm treating this as a long-term hold, but probably the best entry point for you as, if you don't own it now, whether you're completely new to the story or you may have held it in the past and have traded a bit, and I have traded it. I'll talk about that a little later as well. But later in the video, I'll talk about some important aspects on share structure in the actual project, but the first 10 minutes or so are all about Barrick. So that's the key aspect I hope all of you sit through, and I'll provide some links if you want to do your own research. I guess just before getting into it, this can only be bought on the ASX. So this is geared a little more towards the Australian crowd, but I'm American and I buy down there. So you just have to have access to the ASX. I may buy or sell at any time, but I'm not planning to do either. I'm planning to hold this, and I'll tell you why I think this is such a great entry point. Completely independent from the company. Any errors are mine and mine alone. And so let's get into it. Barrick every quarter has very interesting update where they have results presentations, they have an MD&A. It's something that I think everyone should try to follow more than maybe they currently do. It took me a while to realize following seniors and their activities could tell you a lot about the juniors that many of us are interested in. But getting right into it, if you click on the presentation and you go to page 39 and page 40, especially page 40, this is the number one reason Chesser is a standout in West Africa in the gold space right now. A full page is devoted to very exciting drill results and basically listed Kabe West as an emerging discovery, 1 kilometer plus in strike length, with these types of results, very consistent, fairly high grade. I think some of these are close to surface, but some of these are going, to like 200 meters depth. There is something really important right here. So even if you know nothing else about Chesser, what we're getting into here is that this is Senegal. We look up here. Historically, Barrick has treated Senegal as part of the Lulo district, which is mainly Barrick's mines in Mali, something I've talked about in the past. And those are all over here. This side is the Senegal side. It's kind of hard to see it, but they are separated by a border. What's so important, and I think it's undervalued, is that this is true greenfields and is going to lead to a new mine. I 100% guarantee you there's going to be something new and exciting in Senegal, because currently there is no mine, and with that separation of Mali and Senegal, even though I'm sure there's plenty of positive synergies for Barrick to do exploration on the Senegal side, you cannot transport ore from the Senegal side to the Mali side. And so that will lead to, whether it's Barrick or Chesser or someone else in this area, building the very first plant and mining complex. And it's more and more likely because Barrick is saying stuff they don't have to. They don't need to say this is an emerging discovery. This is not required. Newmont, anytime they, as a comparison, they never talk about greenfields exploration discoveries like Barrick has. Now, there are a few other parts of the world, some in Africa, some elsewhere, where Barrick does talk a bit about these greenfields discoveries, but to my knowledge, this is the only one that's pure greenfields that is at this time, right here, right now, this advanced, with Kabi West as probably the center of gravity for them at the moment, but very interesting results at Soya, very interesting results at this new area, Bacata Ridge, and then Gefa was the first place where they had some great results. But Kabi West is the most interesting, and if you notice, most of these are labeled, and then there's this star here. And for those of you who don't know, this is Chester's ground, and this is the center of where Chester's at, and it would roughly be this area. I'll show you on a few other maps. So Chester is right in the thick of things with what Barrick is doing. And I cannot emphasize enough that this makes Chester stand out from all the other West African explorers, some that honestly have very, very exciting things going on, but they do not have Barrick or another major exploring next to them with no mine. Again, there's going to be a consolidation phase here. It's 100% guaranteed. I just wanted to also show, if you go to page 67 of the PowerPoint, you can see all of the drill results, significant drill results for Kabi West and Gefa for this area. Oh, actually, so yeah, basically that whole Bambaji project, it's called the Bambaji project. It's a nice summary because it shows you when various results were released. And Q2 has by far the most interesting results. So this has really been a breakthrough. And I'm just going to keep emphasizing this. This is the MDNA. I always search for Bambaji, and you can see here that there's some a few interesting notes here, but nothing as any more interesting than what we see in the PowerPoint. But occasionally the notes that you'll see in the MDNA will actually provide you more interesting details than how should I say it, the PowerPoint, which tend to come out simultaneously. But I will add, I noticed here the best diamond drill hole not only had what we already saw, 69 meters at 2.27 grams, but this made it very clear, not just a little earlier in the hole, 40 meters of almost a gram per ton. I mean, this is a killer hole. So there's two wide areas, but they just highlighted one of them. It really is so important that Barrick is onto something large here. So we'll talk about this a little bit more, but if you want to dig into this and you're not aware of this at all, this is my number one link to share with you besides that Barrick PowerPoint. I am proud of this. It's one of the few things I continue to post on at Hot Copper. I created this thread back in April of 2020. So, a year and a half ago was my first inkling of how important this Barrick activity was in Senegal. It was the first time I started to become aware that every quarter they would add these details. So I'm going to scroll slowly. If you don't can't see this on Hot Copper, or you have trouble accessing it because you might need to create an account, you can pause this video at any time in here just to read all my original notes and original links, because it's amazing how this has developed or how this has moved forward since then. At the time, and actually, yeah, just as an example, I created these little notes to show how close Chester was at the time before it was started to be highlighted in the Chester PowerPoints, which we'll get into as well. But at the time, this was not really known at all, and it started to build a little momentum. Chester was 6 cents at the time. Went as high as 30 cents. Now we're back to 14 cents. But this was very interesting because you could argue Chester was an awesome buy at the time, only based on Barrick's activity. Now, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm scrolling quicker. And again, you can, if you need to join Hot Copper, it's free to join. And you can go through all of this on your own time. But I'm just going to keep scrolling because every quarter I would add notes here. What's really surprised me is that so few other people would really comment on it. Or sometimes I would take a month or even 2 months to post something. And so I think there's a few others out there that were looking at this. But I'm proud to say, I guess I've consistently said this is the most important reason for why I'm excited about Chester. And it's finally coming back to the forefront now. Now, I did want to come to this post I made just back in September, and this was, again, not even right after the quarterly, but it was a month or two after the last quarterly. This was the key note. This is the transcript of what Mark Bristow said. We believe there is a high potential for a material new discovery or series of discoveries, and we are seeking to consolidate an even larger land position in the district. That is all about the Bambadji area. Now, this quarterly, he did not say anything to that effect. But the PowerPoint, this PowerPoint was far more interesting in this quarter. In the last quarter, this is actually the PowerPoint from the last quarter. There was only this this slide on the Lulo district. So just thinking about the differences, this is what's important. When you piece together what Barrick is willing to disclose, you realize they want the market to be aware that exciting things are happening in Senegal, but they don't want to overdo it. And it's on investors or potential investors like us to piece these things together. So from the last quarterly, you can see there's some interesting stuff in the PowerPoint, but the most interesting thing was this quote about potentially consolidating a land package. From this one, Mark Bristow barely said anything interesting, but this slide not only emphasized the importance of Bambadji as an emerging discovery, but this was added in. They've actually shown even further that this part of the whole Bambadji property is the most interesting part and looks like it's directly connected with what Chesser is doing right here. So this is probably going to be the center of gravity of a new mine. And the question still remains, will it be large enough for Barrick to go all the way and acquire Chesser? Because I am 100% sure they will acquire Chesser at a premium, at some point in the future if Barrick feels that there's 10 million ounces here. So a lot of people, I don't think they believe that yet. They're not even close to believing that yet, but this might be the moment where they start believing, hey, if that could happen, does that mean there's a lot more to discover on Chesser's property? Does that mean it's inevitable for Barrick to pay a huge amount for Chesser, maybe approaching something like $1 billion? That's always been what I've been talking about, but I think that messaging should be accelerated through Chesser. And I think it's happening. It's going to happen, but the market doesn't believe it yet. The stock price is still quite cheap for that realm of possibility. And just to add, to Chesser's credit, this is the end of the last PowerPoint. They have these great, superimposed images showing this. Again, this is where Chesser's at. So for those of you that are new to the story, I know it's a lot to take in, but this little area right here, all of this, that is the equivalent of this area right here with Chesser showing it. And Kabi West, the most interesting part, has added more interesting drill results here. Barrick has not disclosed the cross sections, but my take is that this is likely continuous, the same way that Chesser is showing continuity. And who knows if all of this is connected. And again, that last potentially more critical point, this is new successful auger drilling where there'll probably be RC and diamond drilling. And that is in the new Barrick PowerPoint, but it wasn't in the old Barrick PowerPoint, and it's also not yet in Chesser. So my hope is that Chesser makes this even more prominent in future PowerPoints, because this is the number one reason I really believe Chesser should be looked at as one of the top 2 or 3 picks in West Africa right now, and maybe the top one in terms of valuation. So there's that, and just as, again, probably getting a little overwhelming for some of you, but this is another way to look at Chesser. Barrick's, Bambadji's here. This is blown out a little bit. IAMGOLD has kind of, I wouldn't go so far as to say orphaned, but again, because it's on the Senegal side, this Bodo project, it's not going to be combined with IAMGOLD's other projects in Mali or Guinea. It's not going to be combined with Fekola. Even though it's 50 kilometers away, it could definitely potentially be combined with Bambadji, which IAMGOLD is JV'd with Barrick. IAMGOLD doesn't talk about all the stuff they own here. So at some point, this will be consolidated. Oriole is here. Chesser is primed to be in the center of all of this, no matter how it gets consolidated. I guess one more point to add right here, but we just don't have enough time to get into in the detail. If by chance what Barrick is excited about here doesn't reach the 5 million ounce level, maybe it only reaches. I'm very confident it's going to be at least 2 million ounces here at some point, maybe 2 or 3 million, but maybe it won't reach the 5 million plus or 10 million plus. In that case, Chesser could be primed to buy it from Barrick because Chesser has a good relationship with Barrick, and there are no other juniors that are doing their own thing besides Oriole, just in this area. So IAMGOLD seems to be a little negligent. So either way, it's going to work into something that's favorable for Chesser. Again, can't emphasize it enough, and I think it's been undervalued because of the lack of other juniors. A lot of people talk about Ivory Coast right now as an emerging jurisdiction, and I put Ivory Coast and Senegal kind of in the same ballpark in terms of excitement, but there's far, far more juniors in Ivory Coast, so Senegal has been neglected, and it's to Chesser's benefit because they are in the best position besides a different corporate, which we'll get into a little later, to consolidate here. So Chesser is going to be a winner, and there's going to be a significant mine here. It's just a matter, I guess IAMGOLD, we don't know what they're doing. Barrick, we know what they're interested in, but this Chesser ground is going to be so key. So I've already used up a lot of time, and I guess I'm going to have to see if I can get through everything else fairly quickly, but this would be the time where some of you might want to go off and do your own research, or you've had enough information for the interest on Chesser. I just want to give a quick shout out. I don't post on CEO.ca on Chesser much anymore. My last post was August, and I just kind of wanted to leave it. It's kind of funny that MB, that's Mike Brown, who's the former CEO of Chesser. We haven't talked about Chesser in months. I talked to him about some other things, but it was kind of a nice surprise that this was significant enough that he felt it was worth posting on. Otherwise, I feel like I'd probably be the only person talking about this, but it's not like that created that much buying opportunity. I just thought it was nice that he is still following the story, and I also wanted to point out that in terms of other quick links for you to learn about the story, this was a very good article in the West Australian newspaper. I will just highlight though that this article, I would say what stands out is talking about 100,000 ounces over 6 or 7 years. I think it's important to place that as that is the floor, and this could be so much more. But this article doesn't talk about the Barrick opportunity the same way that I have. So I think that's what's missing from the story right now. But this is still a nice little article, and it talks about some positives on Senegal. It also mentions Silvercore, which we're going to get into, and there is a maiden resource coming. So you can pause the video here and read this, and it's probably the best quick snapshot of a different angle from what I have described so far. And if you go to the Chesser research page from the website, this is this link and a few of the other links will be below the video notes in case you want to click on them that way. There are two good research notes. I actually prefer this one from Uraz Hartley's from June, but obviously it's a little bit out of date. But this newer one from Taylor Collison is very comprehensive, and I think it gives you a good early history of how things have played out. So those are other things to look at, but again, they don't emphasize what I just told you, all this Barrick stuff, which I think is number one, and especially with this exciting update from Barrick. I haven't even talked about the whole share price move, and for those of you though who know, the last time I was picking Chesser, it was basically all the first half of 2020, and it was a bit of a roller coaster ride. I basically said buy, 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 buy here. Didn't know that they were going to make a new discovery. We'll talk about where that's headed. But basically, ever since then, things haven't worked out so great from a share price perspective. Currently, there's about 7 million in cash, so a raise doesn't have to happen. But by the end of this video, I will tell you one of the most critical things is what would potentially happen with a new raise. And I also want to note that the major shareholders have changed. We'll get back into that. But I think that's something that is a concern, but I'm hopeful that it's going to improve quickly. So we'll probably come back to this a little later, but I need to move on. For people who want to know a few other key elements from my perspective of what you should be focusing on for why Chesser is a great buy right now. And this is a really important one, which I don't think is really known for people who haven't been following hot copper. Silvercorp is over a 5% owner in the stock. And it's an amazing surprise because Silvercorp is a large Chinese-based company. It's listed in the US and in Canada. But the most incredible thing to me is that they bought all their shares on the market in a way that was I've never seen happen before. To the credit of Hot Copper posters, I wanted to give some shout outs. I really like the Hot Copper board for Chesser compared to some other companies out there. So a shout out to Lawrence 2001. You could pause the video if you wanted to read these, but also a shout out to Montalbano. These are just two very good posts where I don't, as an American, I don't have great access to Australian trading data. And they realized it looked like there was, along with some others, that there was bot trading. And that's what's incredible is that they're basically Silvercorp. It is now known that they used a bot to buy shares in an incredibly consistent way. For most of the days, it was 500,000 or 600,000 almost every day throughout August and much of September and September. And they were able to do it with a few people on Hot Copper realizing it, but not even moving the share price much. This was all done roughly between, I think, 11 cents and 16 cents, and most of the buys were in 13 or 14 cents. So it's a huge positive that there is now a corporate on the registry. So just to show you quickly, Silvercorp, very legitimate, roughly $1 billion market cap, really nice, thorough presentation. And from what I can gather, all of their main assets are in China, but they are very clearly open globally for any great assets out there with some very large strategic investments in some of them. And if you go to a different part of the PowerPoint, you can see that the largest strategic investment is in Bolivia. There's one in Yukon. There's one in Mexico. There's one in Guyana. There's one in Guatemala. And then there's other mining investments. This is up till June. So Chesser would fit in here. So at this point, Chesser is the only known company in Africa that Silvercorp is invested in, which is exciting in itself because it may mean that Silvercorp is looking at Africa as one of the future areas that they'd want to buy a company. I would guess though that Silvercorp, a lot of their investments just are that they're investments. They want to be a silent partner, and they may not want to turn it into a takeover, but you just never know. They did try to take over Guyana Goldfields and lost out in that bidding war, but I think they are an exciting part of the Chesser story now, and shows proof that corporate interest is increasing, and they are now the largest shareholder. We'll talk about them a little more at the end of the presentation. But on the flip side of that, it should not have been this easy for Silvercorp to acquire on the market. They did this without, Chesser really even knowing it was happening. And I have to point out 1832 Asset Management. This is actually from the Taylor Collison recent research. I noticed that they are listed as roughly a 3% shareholder. And if we go back to the PowerPoint from a few months earlier, they were listed at 5.1%. So sadly, one of the reasons I am speculating that it was so easy for Silvercore to pick up this, pick up this position is because they were buying shares directly from 1832. So this is one of my big disappointments of this year, is that I used to think that institutional investors like 1832 were always really solid investors. And I've realized not only have they sold down their Chester position, maybe they're continuing to sell it down. I don't know. Maybe they'll go to 0%. Maybe they're done. We don't know because they don't have to report under 5%. But they've done the same thing with, I believe, Roscan Gold, with Oklo, which are two, Mali gold plays that are very similar to Chester. Even Tieto, which in Ivory Coast. And so I realize you can't count on a lot of institutions, and that is one of the biggest blows to Chester's share price, is that there's been selling in, shareholders like 1832, and it's unfortunately one of the biggest weaknesses with Chester, where they really need to increase the shareholder registry. But at least Silvercore is going in the right direction. It really is a big positive, but I just had to throw that in there. And sticking with the registry and some of the weakness, I have to point this out because this post, a negative post, but I'm not. I think it's good to always have two sides of the coin in posts. So I don't, I don't think this is bad to have this out here, but I have to address it because I think some people see this and they see it as a really big negative for Chester. You can pause this and read it if you want, but the gist of it is this potential investor in Chester says he or she will never want to invest in the company because of management, giving themselves way too high salaries and too much dilution and too many free options and whatnot. I'm going to address a couple things here because I think this is really important. Number one thing that I think would stand out to a lot of people is the managing director remuneration over $700,000. That caught my eye as well. And I did that's for Andrew Grove, and I did reach out to Andrew Grove when I checked this for myself, because you look at the expected remuneration in 2022, and these are big numbers. I mean, especially this 708. I mean, this is a lot for. I would say this is a lot for directors compared to many other companies out there, whether they're Australian or Canadian listed. So for some of you, that would be a turnoff as well. But you need to keep in mind, it's always good to ask, why not ask management, where do these numbers come from? I know that Andrew, in a different news release, he makes 325,000 Aussie cash a year. So some people might say that's high, but I would say that is in a reasonable area. He inherited these options, basically up to 5 million options for declaring a 1 million ounce, 2 gram per ton JORC resource at some point in the near future. Now, I'm not exactly a fan of that either, but with the way this is calculated, these options are what make up the balance of the 700,000. So some people might see this and think this is all cash remuneration. A lot of this is options. Now, they are zero priced options, and I'm not a fan of that really either. But I do understand. Yes, you can see if this is all from the annual, or what do you call it? The annual. It was what was originally from this thread. I'm forgetting the name of it. There is going to be an annual meeting, and it basically it's a great place to see the background on this information. But I mean, it's not worth spending too much time on this. But I do understand and sympathize to a degree that in Australia, taxation works very differently from Canada. And there are reasons that not only Chester, but many other companies are doing this zero-priced option work. It doesn't look good to people outside of Australia, let alone people in Australia, but the incentives, I think, are reasonable. And I also think, based on following the company so closely, there is quite a bit of an alignment that's already been in place from the company. But I also think the best way to do that in alignment is through buying on the market. And I just wanted to point out, because I don't think many people have dug into this, Robert Greenslade, who is currently a director and was one of the founders of the company, he has put in quite a bit of his own money, and I believe he still owns over 5% of the company through his various holdings. I mean, just to see, this is 2019. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that of his own money that he put in. There is 2018, over hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just going back 2017. So of all the people who are currently on management, he has the largest, that direct investor alignment, in my opinion, through owning stock. I know that Mark Connolly, chairman, and Andrew Grove, managing director, have bought on the market. But what I would really like to see is that in a future placement, that they and the directors collectively put in at least $100,000, let alone over $200,000. To me, that's a much better way to align with shareholders, and I think a lot of people would agree with that versus just having the option. So I'm okay with how things are going, but I'd really like to see more of that. And just for people who followed me for a while, Angus Gold is kind of my gold standard for great alignment. Totally different company based in Canada, but I definitely understand the poor optics here, and I think that this can be this is something that we'd like to see more insider buying. On the other hand, this is not true. 50 million director options, and then they talked about 10% potential dilution. That is just patently false. This approval is something that's very common across other companies, and ASX is very different from Canada in that every year you can only raise up to 15%, I think, of your market cap in various raises without getting shareholder approval. So this is just getting approval before a raise would actually happen. This is very different from Canada, where Canada, you can raise 50% or 100%, double your shares without, I think, having any approval. So in a way, it's actually better in Australia, and it has nothing to do with director options. So I'm just making a point that there's some truth in this post, and there's some things that are just false. And that's where it's, you got to do your own research to figure that out. But it's still good to see a post like this. But I just think that's really important to point out, because some people would see this, not do the extra research, and might just be turned off from the company. So there's some good things going on with the share registry. There's some, negative things, negatively perceived things with, some of these options. For me, it's not something really to worry about too much, but it's something that you should definitely be aware of. And let's try to finish stuff. I could go on for another half hour. I think everyone knows that, but I hope that at least so far this has been valuable. And I haven't even talked about how great the project is currently. So I'm just going to make it clear to you guys. I think the biggest thing is that there's two areas. There's Area D and Area A. And Area D has been where the most exciting drill results have been. This 63 meters at 5.8 grams per ton. I almost wish it was in the headline. I feel like Chester has done a good job not promoting themselves too much, but that was a banger result. And just so you know, there's a really, really high grade area. It's actually expanding a little bit, because that 63, I think, expands it a little here. But some people believe that this is a very constrained pit. I think it's still too early to tell, and I think that that's something the company is doing more to improve on. But I think this was a really important result, because so much of it came through in the fresh rock, and that's the best fresh rock result for Area D. And I think a lot of people miss that. Collectively, it's an excellent result with great grades in both the oxide and the fresh. But so many people don't realize this is the number one, probably like starter open pit of any company I know in the world. There might be a few others, but I don't know anywhere else in the world where you have these consistent, 3, 4, 5+ gram per ton grades in the oxide. And then you're starting to get more in the fresh. Here's another example. These are just cross sections, right through the better parts of the results. But the best part, I mean, these 41 at 7, 35 at 10. I mean, this is going to print cash. and this is just from the previous PowerPoint, just another way to look at it. The key is how much can this expand from here? And there is complexity in the fresh rock, but some people think that this is not going to go to depth, and I think it's just too early to tell. I think that this, there could be more drilling done, at depth, that as they understand structure better, and we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. That's one area to expand, and there's also a lot more expansion potential along the northern arc area. So it's something that that is really exciting for Area D to. I would guess there's going to be at least 400,000 ounces there of very high grade material, but don't think it's just going to be constrained. It's just that's kind of where that is at. But Area A, I brought this up because Area A is going through an interesting transformation right now. So this is somewhat subtle, but there's a new model that's being developed by the company for these results. So Area A was where the original discovery took place, and this is an older PowerPoint, so stick with me here. This was the center of gravity of, the original discovery were some holes here, and this is what the mineralization, the company thought it looked like going back a few years. And that's totally fine to make it think it looked like this, and now thinking it looks like this where the mineralization comes down here. So again, look at these difference, completely different type of model, and complexity means it sometimes takes longer to figure out, how to make the deposit grow and find the most interesting parts of it. But complexity often means it's going to be larger than what you originally expected. So this new model is very exciting because it's very much related to the outstanding results from the most recent release on October 18th, all focused on Area A. And I think, unfortunately, this was, the market didn't pick up on this for a lot of reasons. I had to do a double take because I originally thought this 44 meters at 5.3 was an historical result related to area D. That result was an oxide result that we hadn't seen on Area A ever before. So that in itself was great to see. But the most important thing is seeing the continuity going from north to south through Area A. So I really wish I could spend 30 minutes just on this section, but I guess if I was going to hone in on something, it would be something that a lot of people might not catch. One of the best results prior to that news release, this was something that happened early this year, 25 meters at 7 grams, which was a great result, but at that time, the earlier model made it seem like these were very steeply dipping, basically chutes, which would make for a very high strip ratio. It could still be mineable, but if it just went straight down, it wouldn't be as interesting for an open pit. Now, one of the results from this new news release was this great 12 meters at 9, and there was a 9 meters at 4. And what's that done? That has done is changed the potential geological model to being more of a flat lying and much better for a strip ratio for an open pit. If that's over your head, that's fine. What's important is that this would potentially make the pit much more economic, because again, look at this. These things look like they were kind of separated. And if you look at this new model, it looks like there's something that's much better for an open pit. And that's not even the best part of that potential pit. This is really, really positive looking. I mean, these are great results in a different part of Area A, where if you put an open pit around this, it would have a pretty low strip ratio now and some really nice grades. And here you've even got a great oxide component, and you have these repetitions going down and going down. Now, there's still a question of, how high will the grades be at depth? And there's a lot of complexity. There was actually a great drill result here that was better at depth. Some of the results down here were going at depth, but it does not, if anything, it makes Area A so much more exciting because of some really great continuity. I've spent a lot of time focusing on this news release, looking at all these higher grades. I think the grades of Area A are going up. I think there's a really legitimate resource here now. Now, I would personally guess that this might only be 300,000 ounces. And I don't want to say that I know what I'm talking about yet. There's going to be a maiden resource by the end of the year, maybe by the end of this month on Chesser. And some people thought it would be close to 1 million ounces or above. I want to be more conservative and say I'm thinking it will be 400,000 Area D, 300,000 Area A, so about 700,000. But these are much more open than people realize. And I think maybe the most important thing that would be overlooked by some people. I'll come back to this in a sec. Sorry. Yeah, this video is obviously getting a little long in the tooth, but there's so much exciting stuff happening right now, again, which is why this is a good buy. There are regional targets, just like Barrick to the east, where these are being drilled right now. There's a 4,000 meter program, RC program happening right now, and some of these results may come out within a month, some of the early results here. And all of these targets are very interesting, but I would personally say I'm most interested in some of the targets that are on this northern arc going right into Kabi West. And there's been limited drilling in some of these. If there was one fault related to this for the company that I would say as a shareholder that I'm a little disappointed by, I wish some of this drilling was followed up sooner, because the last time we had some of these results was April 23rd. And there was some really interesting results that were completely overlooked by the market. Just this one line at Area H showed some really interesting results here. Now, this is steeply dipping, and we don't know if the model here is going to change. But just because before I said steeply dipping was not ideal, any other ounces are going to be positive ounces, even if they have a relatively high strip ratio. It's all too early, but what I would have liked to have seen was follow up on Area H. This is Area H here. I would have liked to see it sooner, but we're seeing it right now, and we're seeing it at other targets. So just keep in mind that we already described, Area D and Area A. I'm guessing we probably have at least 700,000 of well over 2 gram per ton, which is fantastic near surface. Again, it's going to be a great starting point. But if we can get some more sniffs of new discoveries at any of these 5 other targets, and we'll know within the next 2 or 3 months whether we do, it's going to if the company plays its cards right, it's going to bring in more of that interest from people who realize, hey, this could be something big, whether it's institutions, retail, or other corporates. So there's a lot of neat stuff going on. Gosh, and again, this is not comprehensive, even though I've covered a lot of ground here. And we have, there's some other things here that I think I'll just skip over. But I cannot emphasize enough, after all the other additional things I added, number one reason to invest right now is that people are going to pick up that this is going to be consolidated and potentially turned into a Barrick-sized mine, or something that maybe not is Barrick-sized, but could be one of the top tier 2 mines in Africa. And I would say something like Séguéla, which some of you are familiar with. It's part of Fortuna Mines now, used to be Roxgold. I would say that would be the low end case. And that's still a really good case to be in. And so, if as a final thought, just for your purposes, we're talking a 65 million market cap. Now it's a little more fully diluted. I noticed, and no one commented yet, but on Friday, even though I don't have great data, I think this was the bot buying Friday afternoon. It was Silvercorp probably buying more shares at 13.5, 14 cents. And they're being sneakier about it. They are still accumulating shares. I'm 100% sure about that. They will have to report at 6%, 7%, but they're somewhere between 5 and 6% right now. So I think they are creating a floor, and that floor is going to increase. maybe 1832 is still selling, but what we have ahead for us is that silver core is still accumulating. There could be a raise in the near future. It doesn't have to be, but there probably should be a raise in the, by the end of the year. Company has $6-7 million right now. I would hope to see a raise of like 10 or 12 million. And maybe it has to be at 14 cents. Maybe it's going to be at 15 cents, but maybe this is going to go up in between now and then because there's a maiden resource coming out, which maybe some corporates or institutions will get excited about. But that may be the catalyst for doing a raise. And then we have all of this regional drilling coming out. So all these things are happening, and you could wait to buy until that stuff happens. But if you don't have a position yet, this, it might run away from you a little bit. I could see a raise happen, ideally with a new corporate or a few new institutions taking the entire raise, and then retail has to chase. This is the most crucial thing coming up. I really, really hope that that management is able to deliver the goods, because they are being well rewarded. I talk to Andrew Grove, roughly every month. I think he's been doing a great job executing, and the project has been moving forward in a way where, from a development standpoint, I think they're doing all the right things. But this is the time to bring in the big guns. Like, they should be interested because of, what's going on with at Bimbaji with Barrick, because of Silvercore, getting a position. So if they can, pull through, bring on a corporate, or bring on some institutions that could, that are going to be better institutions than an 1832, and then make retail chase it, that's the ideal situation. Maybe retail gets some of the next raise. For me, it's really critical going into next year that this company is fully funded, so that we may, along with Barrick, show that this is a much, much bigger mine than something that's 600 to 700,000 ounces, which is a great starting point. But I know this could be much, much bigger. So hopefully a lot of you kind of buy into that. But at the very least, pay attention to what's happening with Chester Resources right now, because I think everything I've just expressed makes it a very unique opportunity, and almost no one else is talking about it besides on the Hot Copper board. Again, thanks to all the great posts on Hot Copper from fellow investors, and maybe some of you will want to join me for the long haul in this company. I think somewhere between 50 cents and $1.50 is going to be the target, for a takeout down the road. But we'll just say I'm personally seeing $1 somewhere between, whether it's a Barrick scale or a how would you say it? Seguela type scale. So 5 to 10 bagger from here, definitely realistic, and it'll be an exciting time to really see what happens with Chester going into next year. All right, thanks for sticking with me, guys. Take care. Bye.